Hey everybody, Chris Giles here from the Factory, back with another Real Sales Talk. We're blessed to have Evan Santa from Vidyard join us today. Talk about the future of sales and how communication is changing. The world is going to be different. Welcome, Evan. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, that's awesome to have you. Vidyard's a fantastic customer of ours and supplier of us, and we just really enjoy dealing with you. And I want to hear more about how Vidyard, how Evan Santa, how you feel sales is going to change. Will you do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Evan Santa, sales manager over at Vidyard. I've been in software for just over 6 years now.
Okay.
I had an interesting path in my career. I started cutting lawns in university, started a little business that way. And through the various jobs that I had, I ended up with an engineering firm, just sort of fell into that.
Excellent.
And I was there for about 8 years. And then I woke up one day and I wasn't too happy with what I was doing.
Cool.
So I then, sold a house, shut down a life, and started a new one in Toronto. And that was about 6 years ago. And when you have on your resume that you've been working with an engineering company for about 8 years, nobody in the big city of Toronto will let alone let you in the building for an interview. So from there, I started a consulting firm. This is during the e-commerce boom,
right?
When people are creating the most random objects out of their homes and garages and basements and trying to sell them online.
Cool.
And from there, I ultimately did some consulting with a few different companies, and that led me to a company called Touch Bistro, to which I built a business development firm at. That's right. And then I landed over at Vidyard. So it's been a really, really interesting run. And I don't think if you would have told me 6 years ago that I'd be a sales manager at this point, if I would have believed you, but here we are.
I think it goes back to the whole thing of what the factory does, help people place them in their careers, that sometimes the path is not always as clear.
Yeah.
And I think what you just explained there is exactly what our viewers need to understand and learn too, is that sometimes finding your way to your destination isn't always as straightforward. Well, as you well know, and I told you beforehand, we ask you 5 simple questions, and this helps discover a little bit more about you. And so these questions are really simple. They tell us about you. So let's start out right away with the speed round. What's a positive word you live by, a positive word you like?
Accountability.
Accountability. What does that mean to you?
Well, ultimately you need to be accountable with everything that you do. Like sometimes if you should second guess yourself in everything that you do, and you need to be your own worst critic. And this goes as far as walking past that piece of fluff that's on the floor in the morning. Because if you walk by that, that's on you.
Yeah.
And I find myself constantly checking myself to do those small things, and all the way up to the biggest business decisions that we make, how I manage a team, how I take care of my family. It's all accountability.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm just repeating that in my head from when I wake up in the morning to every night when I go to sleep.
Just making sure that you can be counted on.
Yeah,
makes some sense.
To pick up the fluff and to
get her done.
To close the big deal, for sure.
Awesome. Well, if you have a positive word, which is accountability, there's obviously a word that creates an adverse reaction for you, or a negative word. And what would that negative word be?
It's can't.
The word can't. I know that word well.
Yeah,
I also
we
like it. Tell me why you don't like that word.
I years ago I came up with a almost like a word equation where it's absolution minus motivation plus fact equals I can't do that. And I hate
it. Give me that one more time again.
For the absolution. Okay. So absolving yourself.
Yeah.
Minus motivation.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Your lack of, having to try equals I can't do that. And it's a statement of I can't do that. And one of the biggest problems with the statement I can't do that is you're absolving yourself of ever having to try.
Right.
So you're saying I can't do that. So Chris, don't hold it against me that I'm not willing to try.
I think, I follow the exact same philosophy just to play on it. And I think it's a word that people use because of a lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, maybe a lack of clarity on what's going to happen. So therefore there's fear. And, I always say, I just don't understand. I was never allowed to use the word in my house. It was against the rules. And we said it out there. I'll say it again. Can't includes the word can. So why do we just start with can, leave the apostrophe and the T off, and we're good to go? Well, that's fantastic. Accountability sounds like we're going to get it done. Can't says you can count on me.
Yep.
And what about a hero in your world? Somebody that's helped you to get to, what is Evan Santa made of, and how did this person help? Who's that hero?
There's lots, but it would definitely be my father.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Orville Santa.
Orville Santa.
Yeah.
I like him.
Don't search that on Google though.
No.
But no,
like he's
my dad came, you hear the story all the time. of coming from, immigrant parents who are doing everything they can to support their family.
Right.
But when my dad's just an entrepreneur till death. He's taught me so much, and I feel privileged to have been his son, to have been in the same household while he was building multiple businesses in order to support our family and provide the lifestyle that we did. And I learned so much from him. And I think I even learned how, like, I take different ways that he raised me. And, I think there's a point in, no matter who raised you, you walk away from the individual who raised you. And sometimes you go to a room and punch a pillow. You know what I mean? And you get very angry with that individual, but it's years later when you realize that those lessons that they teach you are invaluable.
Yeah.
And they're what make you a better person. They're what make you more accountable to those around you. And a lot of in the way that he raised me as his son is I bring that to the office every day, and I instill a lot of those values, those ethics, that work ethic, that drive, that accountability to all the people that I'm accountable for.
What were the businesses your father did? Were they in the technology field or something completely different?
My dad was in marketing, but my dad was also in politics in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
So again,
as well.
not a path you followed specifically from your father, but all the lessons he put together has allowed you to get to where you're going to today.
Absolutely. He was the one who pushed me to create a landscaping business. He was my primary investor.
Nice.
As well.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think, whatever vertical you end up in business, there's the fundamentals of business are all the same.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be in healthcare, you could be in finance, you could be in software. You still got to get up every morning. And if you're going to be successful doing that, there's a strong set of fundamentals that will allow you to do that. And it doesn't matter which vertical.
I think the mothers and fathers of the world deserve a lot more credit.
Absolutely.
I know you are as well. So it's an important job. Well, I guess a dream that you have, something that's a dream in Evan Santa's mind that you'd like to express out there, maybe that's going to end up coming true. What is it?
Oh, Chris, I live my life like 12 months in advance. Like I'm looking 12 months in 12-month increments all the time.
Goal setting, folks.
Yeah. So my wife and I are moving into our house next Thursday, Friday. I'm living amongst boxes right now.
Perfect.
So that was, ultimately that was a big dream when I moved down to Toronto 6 years ago and reinvented my career. The paycheck that I was getting was very, very, very entry level. So to be able to do what I did in the last 6 years was a massive dream of mine. But with that, it came with so many different challenges along the way. And so I think one of the biggest ones was for us to be able to, in the last 3 years, I got married, had a baby, moving into our family home as of next Friday. So it's, everything's sort of working out. But the thing is
but it's the planning of all that. So now maybe your dream of yours is to be that family. It sounds like you want to be the future Orville Santa. Is Evan Santa in the making as we speak?
Right now I've got everything that I want. But at the same token, there are other aspirations, but they're all 12-month increments. I'm fighting. I have sometimes I have difficulty with people who talk about dreams and they'll say, I want to do this in 5 years. Here's a boat I want to own in 5 years. And for lack of a better term, I tell them to get bent, because the reason being is that tell me you want to do that in 24 months and we'll have a conversation and we'll strategize around how to do that.
Right.
You tell me you want to do that in 5 years. That is just so, the dream is a great word, but there also has to be a plan in order to achieve it.
Execution.
So one of my next things is just paying off some of the things that I need to pay off.
Right.
And once that's done, and I've got a plan to do that in the next 6 months, then let's pay this house off.
Gotcha.
And here's the time frame we're going to do it in. So that's the way that I dream.
Cool. Awesome.
That's the way that I dream.
Love it. And then I guess the last one, so it's great. We receive accountability. We found out about the word can't. We know about Orville. We know that the family is going to be critical. So foundation sounds like it. Foundation is your dream, is to create it. And it sounds like you're well on your way. What's a valuable business lesson? This is, we'll go throughout the whole day talking business lessons, but there's one that you'd say that, this one really made a difference for me.
It comes from my father as well. And the reason I say earlier, don't Google him, is when he was in politics in the city of Thunder Bay, Ontario, he challenged everything. Challenged everybody, challenged everything. He challenged himself. So I take that into business, and ultimately actually I should step back just a little bit. When you challenge things, people get very uncomfortable. Right. It's the only way that we can get better at anything. 100%. It's the only way that we can look at something and say, maybe there's a better way to doing this. The most successful companies, the most successful people in the world exercise this all the time.
Right.
And ultimately, that is the biggest lesson that I've learned within business is you need for the betterment of the business, the betterment of the customer, and in order to innovate and evolve, we need to challenge everything.
100%.
And we need to sit across from the table and be willing to professionally and gently challenge one another, but not be afraid to do so because it might be a difficult conversation to have. So that's something that I'm practicing and preaching, and even with my wife, like we will challenge, like, am I right here or am I wrong? Like, let's not sit around and self-serve each other and rub each other on the back and pat and walk away with the wrong decision because we were too afraid to have some type of conflict in conversation.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've completely changed my career at the age of 51. Completely reinvented myself, learned industries, and tried to figure things out. And I found it's because I found in that challenge, I actually found different things that even the people that were in it were not paying attention to. And I think, the best thing I always look at whenever I'm teaching an employee or if I'm dealing with a team that I'm training is I said, have you ever seen a small child, approximately 12 months to 18 months, try and walk?
Right.
Their level of appetite to walk is insatiable. The smashing of the knees, the smashing of the forehead, it's all fine as long as we get the movement in the end. Perfect. So we understand a little bit more about Evan Santa. Here we go. We're going to now talk, as I mentioned, our theme today is to understand how is communication going to change in sales and how is sales changing? So my first question is, and I'll start right off there because you work for Vidyard, which is a fantastic company that's pushing the limits of how we communicate and how we're changing. What is the future of sales as far as Evan Santa is concerned? What's going to happen there?
Well, the thing about, pardon me, the future of sales is obviously undetermined. But at the same token, I think that we need to challenge ourselves to admit that perhaps the tactics that we're using from the books that we read that were written 10 years ago, although a lot of that stuff is still valid and there are some very, very strong fundamentals in such literature, the buyer has changed since you and I started this conversation.
Correct.
Their behavior is changing immensely. We're seeing that with this huge evolution or revolution of technology.
Yeah.
You watch the news and you realize that people now are receiving Happy Meals through the air with drones in Southern California. Like, it's just insane as to what's happening. So I think one of the most important things that needs to happen within especially mid to larger size organizations is that they need to sit around and challenge and say, okay, we've been using the same sales strategy for even the last 12 months. Is it still relevant?
Right.
So one of the things that I've set out to do is to simply just remove red tape from a sales process, remove friction, seek to educate rather than to sell. I think one of the biggest problems
Excellent point.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with traditional software or enterprise level sales is the fact that there's a negotiation that starts before there's any education, which I think is backwards.
I agree with
and that's the way it was done 10, 20 years ago and it made sense. But nowadays, people jump on websites and they'll abandon those websites if you withhold a price from them. It doesn't matter what product they're purchasing. So if you go to buy a $3-4 million home, you're going to see it listed as $3 million, all the way down to the dollar. So why are we withholding that on a $20,000 deal or a $100,000 deal? And furthermore, not only withholding information can be difficult or hurt the trust before it's even has an opportunity to flourish. There's also the idea that if you don't provide something like transparent pricing, it actually just has people, it forces individuals to question value. If you walk into a car dealership, a Mercedes-Benz car dealership, and they say, and I walk up to a vehicle there, they're going to very proudly tell me that's a $150,000 car.
Right.
Immediately, I start to think, must be worth it. Now, if a salesperson says, I'm not going to tell you
it's
pricing,
a lot of money.
First, tell me how much money you make.
Yeah.
Let's take it for a spin. The whole time, I'm wondering, is he gouging me? Is there some type of mistrust that's happening? Is it worth what they're going to eventually tell me what it's worth? And all these different thoughts happen. So I think the future of sales really needs to focus. If you see what's happening in communication within all these different companies and all the companies, including Vidyard, who's changing the way businesses are communicating effectively. People are gravitating towards this new level of trust that has been missing for the last 20 years. And I think that we need to ensure that we're selling with an, I guess the word would be an increased level of humanity, trust, and a style of education rather than just.
I almost feel the words empathy. Like you want to act with, you want to be righteous and you want to be empathetic. You know, it's funny as a purchaser myself and a seller of products, I believe in what you're saying. I don't know if I need the full transparency in every situation because I can appreciate sometimes too much information can be a little bit of a challenge. So there's an argument, I think you would agree with me, that there's an argument sometimes to helping to educate the customer rather than having them educate themselves. And I think there's some danger in today's society where, you know, I know is, I mean, if you look at all the smartest people in the world, I always find the smartest are the grandmothers and the grandfathers. And, you know, they're still trying to figure out how to work an iPad that, you know, they might be 80 years old. My mom is an example. And I think to myself, what am I doing today that's too stagnant? And so I agree with you. The future of sales goes back to one word you said earlier, which is educating them.
Yeah.
And I think if you take an effort to understand who your customer is, because there should be lots of information out there to understand your customers, then when you arrive, you should already know that you should be able to create a return on that investment for them. And then it becomes your responsibility to fight through a little bit of their objections, to help educate them. And I always say that, and I'm sure you operate the same, is rather than worrying about the price or what this is going to cost you, whether you're going to like it, why don't we just talk for right now?
Right.
Because when you do pay, I want to make sure you get the value you deserve. But if we don't talk correctly about this and we start putting up contentious arguments all the way through it, I think we're in danger. And I think that's what I feel the future of sales is being more respectful to people.
Well, what's really interesting about it is that since drawing out this playbook and then trying to see if ultimately there was some findings of truth to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I put it into action. I had a great opportunity at Vidyard and still have to put this into action and see how people respond to it. And it was almost unbelievable as to the response of a lot of our customers and a lot of our potential customers in first the guard they would have up when they would come to a sales call ultimately with us.
I know, it's crazy.
And some of them would be shocked. They go, well, I understand you're not going to tell me what this costs until the next 3 calls. I'm like, no, I'll tell you right now. Yeah. And all of a sudden the guard drops and they go, oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And sometimes by the end of a process, whether or not, or a sales process, sales cycle, we'd have potential customers, sometimes even when they don't buy, thanking us, just saying, this has just been a great experience.
And I think you owe it to them. I think you agree with me, right?
One of the biggest things that I have my team, one of the biggest talk tracks that I have my team utilizing is, Chris, if you sit down with me for 30 minutes, I'm going to get you all the information you need to make an educated decision as to whether or not it makes sense to add this to your process. Now, the best thing about that is the fact that in 30 minutes, you're either going to know you need to add this to your process, or you're going to know that you don't need to add this to your process. And then it allows you to get that time back to go find what it is you do.
Maybe you found some other things. So you spend some time on reinventing yourself. Couldn't agree more.
That's right. Because your employees are desperately waiting for you to find the solution that's going to take your company to the next level. So I'm going to give that time back to you. I'm going to be so valuable to you in the next 30 minutes. And if you decide not to purchase, that's great. Isn't it great we found that in 30 minutes, not 4 calls and 3 weeks down the road?
Or for that matter, you don't know and you always wonder. And that's I think that's, and you know, I think it's important as salespeople, as I use your word again, if you don't mind, educators, that, you know, I always say when I'm training salespeople, you build your sale based on a base of knowledge, which is your knowledge of the customer and your knowledge of the product. The reason you have that knowledge is, of course, you're supposed to be the teacher, the leader in the room. It's supposed to lead everybody to the promised land, which is, Mr. Customer, you buy Vidyard, and then this happens, and you'll receive greater results in your activities. Or for that matter, you buy this Mercedes-Benz, or for that matter. And the idea being is when they make that decision, there's that trepidation, that fear has been withdrawn, not in that one moment when they sign the check, but throughout that process.
Yeah.
So in terms of communication goes, with the future communication, I think it goes back to maybe how we talked about it. You know, it is Vidyard that is really one of those game changers in the world right there. What is Vidyard? What do you think Vidyard's done to help improve the process of communication directly?
I think just
championing it.
Just bringing humanity back to it. I mean, I spent so much time building business development teams.
Right.
So how do we, as a software company, get in touch with Chris Giles at the Faktori? I've
call myself. But anyways.
Yeah, there you go. I've got your number. But I mean, ultimately, we spent so long trying to understand, like, see, this is where the whole thing gets interesting. Okay, is that you get guys like me and these leaders in the industry who are trying to figure out how to drive the best business development team in the industry.
Right.
Now, I'm motivated in order to purchase a home, accelerate my career, take care of my family, etc. So I want that team to be the best possible team going.
Yep.
Now you've got individuals on LinkedIn who are providing a lot of information, which is great. That, like, there's nothing better than information. But at the same token, everybody's now sharing the same strategies. Right. Because everybody are grabbing onto all these influencers, and they're saying, okay, well, now we're going to use that talk track. We're going to use this line. We're going to write our emails that way. And what's happened is that the Chris Gileses of the world are getting smashed and absolutely inundated with all the same, ultimately,
same sales process.
Emails utilizing the exact same playbook.
Yeah.
Chris Giles, please read my email. And at the end of this, do you want to have a 30-minute call? I'm going to give you a free demo. That's what you're going to get in terms of value out of this. So what Vidyard's really doing is just bringing a little bit of humanity back to this process.
Love it.
And one of the biggest problems I believe in all sales is when you're making your prospects feel as though they're just simply a transaction.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. So I mean, obviously, we can all remember, and I'm sure the majority of the people watching this and listening will remember the ultimately the rise and the power that marketing automation created, and how powerful it is still in the market.
Yes.
And it used to work really, really well because you were able to email tens of thousands of people one message and ultimately generate leads and generate conversations from it. Problem is now is you can easily identify, even if you I'm in the business and I can easily identify when I actually get an email from somebody who maybe actually knows who I am versus, oh, here's the Monday morning news bulletin from XYZ company. And the thing is those emails, we're spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for people to delete those emails. So what Vidyard is doing is, if I can show you immediately when you open that email, if you open it, that's the catch, right?
Got to.
But if you open the email,
I have a feeling on that. I believe you should open almost every email you receive.
I
you
think
know why?
so too.
It's not because you may. Sorry, I apologize for stopping your train of thought, but I have a thought on that because I think we're supposed to give tips where you hear them. I heard one.
Yes.
Is I believe you can learn something from either the product, the way they sell, the person. You never know who you're going to meet.
Couldn't agree more.
I do not believe there's anything that's a waste of time other than the fact that, okay, next time that guy sends it, that will be a waste of time to read it again.
Yes. But the one thing that we have to be careful with, and this is a very interesting conversation, but the one thing we have to be careful with is that, and pay attention the next time that you open an email, and you might be the anomaly, but the majority of people, when email first came out, people would open their email and start to read the copy.
Yeah.
Okay. It was the same as getting a letter to your house. Yeah. You open it up and you start to read. What people do now is they open up the email, and rather than starting to read the copy and the message that is included, they instead immediately try to understand the intent of the email. And once that intent...
Critical message here, people. He's right. This is a critical message, yeah.
And once that intent is understood by the recipient, they're either going to read or delete. But they decide prior to reading. So that's where, I mean, ultimately Vidyard, I mean, when we're embedding a video into an email, whether it's personalized or not, what it does is it's creating a pattern interrupt in that individual's day.
Yeah.
So, but at the same token, this is how communication is evolving. And Vidyard, I mean, Vidyard's success, and we're helping so many different companies and so many different industries break through the noise of traditional email by doing this. But at the same token, how powerful will it be when absolutely everybody's using it? There was a VP of sales who said, you've got 12 months where this tool is extremely effective, and then that might change. Now, we are working.
They're saying that about your tool?
Yeah, there was.
Well, what they're saying could be said for the written language,
or about the telephone, for sure.
I mean,
for sure. And
if you don't nail this written language bit, yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest focuses we have at Vidyard is continuing to innovate our products and make sure that it's powerful and make sure that we are able to provide the utmost value to our customers. Absolutely,
sharing, absolutely.
So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Right.
So I think I agree with you, and to speaking to Vidyard, and I think it's what that's why I have the guests on, because I want to hear about their company, and And what I love about Vidyard, I use Vidyard. We use it both internally for information. We pass information internally. In fact, I used it. I think I told you, we were trying to communicate with Doug Ford regarding a charity that I'm involved in, and I used Vidyard to communicate directly with Doug Ford. I don't know whether he watched it, but I know that somebody from his team watched 100% of the video multiple times. So I know that whatever I was going to write in an email would never have been able to convey that effectively as it was conveyed immediately in that email. And the fact that I knew they watched it, which of course was critical. Now, I think Vidyard is exactly the tool that's going to dictate the future, which is if you're not real, we're not buying.
Yep, I agree.
And what Vidyard does allows you to be real.
Yeah.
And it allows you to jump. It's like we do at the factory. We do a process of using video to let the person explain who they are as a person. And we use a number of different processes to allow better emphasis on the candidate. And I think it uses a concept of Vidyard of letting the person show who they are, be who they are. Fantastic. Okay, let's get on some more questions. Sort of drive some important things. What's a key thing a manager's taught you? Maybe for the managers out there that maybe could learn some things, maybe two things. The key thing that you teach your people, but also something somebody taught you that you're passing on. That'd be helpful to know because those are always the things that are important.
Yeah. I think, I'll start with mine. I again, like this whole conversation started around accountability.
Right.
So, I mean, my management style is I'm constantly trying to, I have very personal conversations with my reps, none that of course cross any lines, but very personal in the sense of I want to understand why they come into the office every day. I don't think it's enough for us just to show up to work. A lot of people do that. A lot of people live their lives not knowing why they got
activity-based lives.
Yeah, not knowing why they got in the car in the morning. So I try to have that conversation with everybody that I manage and everybody that I've managed in the past is to understand, like, what do you want to do? Right. I mean, we talked about dreams at the beginning of this as well. Like, what are your dreams? What are your financial dreams? Because I can help you do that. Like this is a vehicle for us to be able to do that. So, or not even financial, but what do you want to learn over the next 12 months in terms of becoming the best professional that you can? So I'm always trying to drive a heightened level of accountability. I think that
sounds like investment. You're asking them to put the dollars on the table, the effort, to put something down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, again, like these, when young professionals enter into their career, or even people who are looking to reinvent their career, and they're not necessarily in the category of young professionals, one of the biggest things that you can do, and that I again try to coach on, is being the best professional that you can be. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But at the same token, you need to understand that when you roll into whatever workplace you're rolling into every day, you have an opportunity to be great or just show up.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I'm always pushing on.
And the difference between the person who shows up and the person is great, it often seems like a massive chasm for the one person. Yeah. But for the other person, they're just doing their job. I don't think the chasm's as big as it is attitude, right? You would agree with me on that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like the advancements that I've been able to attain in my career are all because of that. That's it. Like I was taught.
Just bringing a little bit extra.
I was taught by one manager that I had that how you do anything is how you do everything. I wrote that down on a sticky note.
I like that one. There's always something. Listen, folks, that's a good one. How you do anything is how you do everything.
So he brought me into a room when I first started, a software company in Toronto, and he grilled me. He says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to be successful for the company." He says, "No. What do you want to do?" And he just kept grilling me and grilling me and grilling me and grilling me and grilling me until it was like, I'm not making any money here. I've got a woman that I'm in love with. I want to be able to buy her a ring. I want to be able to pay for that ring. I want to be able to pay off the credit cards that I owe. And he was able to drive all the way down into that to finding that out. And once he found that out, the relationship and bond between us was so strong. And he's the one who taught me that the companies that you represent, you owe it to them to show up every single day at 100% of your game.
Yeah.
Every single day. But if you do that, the horizons that open up for you, be that financially, what you're able to learn, how your opportunity to lead a team, which is one of the most honorable things, and I feel so privileged to have the opportunity to do that. But if you come in every single day and bring 100% of your game, don't ever take a sick day unless you're actually sick.
Might as well.
Yeah, there you go. So, but the thing is that if you apply yourself at the highest level every single day, you try to learn never say can't, try to learn as much as you can it's unbelievable what that will do for you. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do out there
I
is they're
couldn't agree
looking at their career, their outcome, etc.
It's funny. I always, whenever I hire people, I always say to somebody, I'll say, you give me 6 months, I'll make you better. Give me 2 years, I'll change your life.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that we are going to have to put, it's everything, it's all in, right? Everything's got to be in for us to be successful.
Right.
If this is going to be a part-time gig for you, you're going to try your hardest. Well, I got to know what your hardest is and make sure it's going to be enough for us.
For sure.
Because we got, as you mentioned, you got a team, right? If it was just a single individual and they didn't work hard enough, well, then they just complain or talk to themselves.
Right.
But in most cases, we're a part of an organism, and an organism needs everything. Excellent. Well, we had some great tips so far. What about the young people out there? Well, you're not that old, but there's lots of things that these young people, these guys are joining this career now, especially in this software as a service market, or all the markets really. What's going on for these young people? What is a couple lessons you'd like to teach them? Help them out.
Oh, I think it's okay to, like, whatever your road is, that's all right. Like, I used to play in rock bands.
Nice.
You and I have
He looks
talked
like a
about
rock
that
star,
before.
folks.
Yeah. Don't look like a software sales guy, that's for sure. But it's okay, no matter what you want to do, that's great.
Yeah.
But articulate that, and articulate to yourself, and don't dip your foot into the left, dip your foot in the right when you want to go straight. Yeah, commit.
It's right here, folks.
So if you want to play on a rock band, figure out how you're going to do that. Figure out how you're going to get on the road. Figure out how you guys are going to pool in the money to buy a van.
Yeah.
I did all that stuff. It was some of the best years of my life. But when I put the guitar down, I buckled in so hard. Like, I switched my life like that by going from like living in a van to software sales. And I was able to do that by ultimately just hitting the pavement when nobody would hire me, rather than going back and picking up the guitar and being like, okay, well, now
maybe I'll just get a job at a bar. Maybe I'll do this. So yeah, I'll be fine.
Get a job at a bar.
It's not for me.
Totally. I just kept learning. I'd spend 12-hour days online trying to understand what the hell Salesforce was.
Perfect.
and I learned it.
What is it? Just kidding.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
I just kidding. I love Salesforce. We love you, Salesforce.
But the whole, for young people out there, it's okay if it doesn't matter what you want to do, whether you want to travel, whether you want to jump into the workforce right away. It doesn't matter. Just commit to it 100%. Go and do it. And then when it starts to feel wrong, identify that as well, and then grow and change and adapt and do that as fast as you can.
Yeah.
The years
Hold the accountability.
and the years go by quick. I mean, when I'm looking at what it takes to be able to purchase a home, restart your career, like it took me 6 years to get where I am, and 6 years is it's not 10 years, but at the same token, like it's a chunk. So,
and I think what's really important, and I think it's really driving success as I go forward for when I'm trying to help people, is to have them exactly recognize the commodity of time.
Yep.
And how the commodity of time is the only element that cannot be replaced.
That's right.
And I don't know what I would say to a young person today other than to measure that time. Mm-hmm. And, I always say measure it in the same fashion as compound interest, that if you use the time well today, you maybe don't have to relearn those steps today. But if you misuse the time today, then tomorrow that's the whole carpe diem, right? My idea is like, let's rip it today, man.
That's right.
I want to rip it again tomorrow. Perfect. What's a strength in your sales game and something that you feel has really been beneficial to you?
Well, I set out, and it's not in any negative fashion, but I set out to ultimately challenge, and if not break, the traditional sales method of B2B sales.
Okay.
As a business development manager, I was spending so much time ultimately creating opportunities for sales teams. And I did this over a number of companies. And what I noticed was there was a lot of contention. And we've spoken about this throughout this conversation. So I think one of the biggest strengths was not only my ability to identify that, but to then draw a playbook based around what I think would service the prospective customer, not even the customer, just who's interested in talking about our product and understanding it.
Yep.
So I think one of the most, the biggest strengths in my sales playbook, or my sales arsenal, or myself as a salesperson, is the ability to reposition the conversation so that it's more valuable for the prospect than it is for us.
Of course it should be.
And I think a lot of this goes into a bit more, we used to always talk about B2B and B2C and how separate that was. I believe now that they're very much intertwined, and they actually never were that separate. So it's much more of a B2C type of selling in a traditional manner, of the sense that if you walk into my storefront and start asking me questions, well, I don't immediately ask you what your budget is.
No.
I'm going to start answering them.
Yes.
So that's one of the most powerful things that I'm doing right now in sales, is trying to reposition that conversation so that it serves the prospect a little bit more than it serves ourselves.
Excellent.
And what's interesting with that, Chris, is the reason that that's powerful, because a lot of people might be listening and say, or even you sitting here wanting to challenge me on it, is that,
no, I believe in 100%.
well, but a lot of people might say, well, but then why is that a strength within your sales process? The reason,
okay, go ahead. I can't wait to hear it. But
well, the reason it's a strength is the fact that it allows these your prospective customers to drop the guard, and they'll actually tell you a lot more
100%.
than as if you put them under a bright light and said, hey, how much money have you got to spend?
Yeah.
What is the date that you're going to sign this thing by?
Yeah.
Like, they're like, I don't even know who you guys are yet.
I always say people buy, companies pay.
There you go.
And so if you don't understand that that person has to make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be perfectly clear, they do. And on top of that, there's a person behind them that's judging the person making the decision, and a person on top of those two people that's also looking at the decision.
Yep.
Then there's going to be somebody at accounting that's going to therefore correlate the decision with some data and then question that decision. And then when it appears on the monthly books and the quarterly books and the annual books, they can go back and question the decision. So if you don't think you have every obligation to let them know every reason that they're making the decision so they can answer to each one of those times they'll be questioned on it,
Yep.
I think you wonder why you're in sales.
My favorite. I mean, everybody's always talking about, well, competitive conversation. What's the talk track? You can spend hours on LinkedIn trying to, and you have all these people selling the same old, this is how you deal with that conversation. This is how you deal with that conversation. The way that myself and my team are dealing with the conversation of how do you weigh up against this competitor?
Right.
The way that we're answering that, and the way that I want everyone to answer that is, Chris, this might not be the right product for you. You need to be the one who goes out. So go out and look at this competitor, this competitor, this competitor. And furthermore, have you heard of this competitor? They're also in the space too. Oh no, I haven't heard of them. I would recommend checking them out as well, because here's the thing, Chris, this decision is about you. It's about the Faktori, which is your business, which I'm not invested in. No. So ultimately, you need to find the right software that's for you. Furthermore, I've purchased software in the past, Chris, so I'd be very happy to help you evaluate it. And in the past, I've actually urged people to go with our competitors rather than ourselves, because it just made more sense.
But when you're right, it's a no-brainer. Walk down the road.
So because there's still people selling in a traditional manner, we've had people come back to us. I have one rep in an individual who the next day had called us back and said, "Send me the papers. I'm signing with you." And he says, "Well, why?" He says, "Because I went to your competitor and said, tell me about Vidyard." And he said, they just basically ripped on you guys. Negative talk. Yeah. It's hard not to use.
Try to be nice. Exactly.
It's hard.
Negative talk, we call that.
Ultimately, they
don't understand how they should respect their competitors. So they may be a competitor.
Ultimately, just tore us up.
Yeah.
And he said, you guys said to me that you were willing to help me, and this decision was for me. They ultimately just sat there and said, we're the best in the industry. Da 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 da. People don't buy that anymore.
Well, I think that in today's, this is real sales talk. So this is talking about real sales, and everybody acts like it's changed so much. Well, I've got a fair bit of history. It hasn't.
Right.
There's still aversion to buying the wrong product.
Yep.
There's still acceptance of buying the right product.
Mm-hmm.
It's never changed. It won't change for the rest of history.
Right.
But if you continue to drive the wrong product down somebody's throat, they're not going to buy. No matter how many, if you put a cadence on 400 phone calls and 72 emails and 32 LinkedIns, they will say no 727 times.
Well, and we also
but
shouldn't.
If you have the right product, they might say right once.
We also shouldn't be satisfied that they bought.
We should be helping them.
That's right.
Yeah.
So as businesses grow, it's very difficult to try to hang on to that. But the more we try to hang on to that, the better we'll be as companies. And maybe we didn't have a great quarter, but that's because we didn't missell 100 customers because we got the person telling them everything that they need to hear.
It's interesting. I think one of the most important things that is a lesson, I heard two things from you that I'd like to draw out. If it's okay, I want to come back to it, is Playbook. I want to talk about that. But a second thing I just want to just quickly make a point on, then we'll go back to Playbook if it's okay, is for these young people that are starting their careers. I think it's a good thing you brought up there. And I don't want them to find the perfect thing to sell. That's not going to be possible. In fact, I would say probably find the toughest thing to sell.
Yeah.
If you can find the toughest thing to sell and learn how to sell that,
Mhm.
then everything else will fall into place. Okay.
For sure.
If you're selling, if you're selling bathing suits in the Antarctic, well, you can really make a good living probably doing everything. But if you're going to sell, lawn chairs at a resort, well, everybody wants one.
Mhm.
Okay. So find something that's challenging. Don't be afraid of it. Sell it. Even if you don't like it, get really good at it
Yeah.
and then go do something else. That's the first thing I'd say, because I liked what you said there, that like know your product and know what you're doing. But talk to me a little bit about Playbook. Too many people out there. I love the idea of the Playbook. I'm guilty myself of not having the best Playbook. I think everybody out there is probably guilty of it. I think that's a work in progress at all times, right? But you look at, the New England Patriots who won their championship for the umpteenth time. They follow plays. They're
right.
calling in play 72. They're calling in play 44, and off they go and they win the game
That's
with
right.
it. How do you devise a playbook out there?
Well,
How do you help somebody say maybe a few key things without getting? We haven't got hours to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. We could go on and on about it.
Right.
The thing is, so if you look at NFL, and I'm sure it's true to many other sports,
Makes sense.
is that the playbook is actually, a lot of people want to say, they'll throw around the word playbook, sales strategy, playbook.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is that there is, when you look at the NFL and, to your example, and so New England Patriots, they're going to call this play, they're going to call 37 blitz or whatever it is.
Right.
That's situational. It's situational. So
he's not calling that when he's on offense.
Well, they just have buckets. Yeah, they have buckets, right?
Yeah.
So everything's bucketed, and it's based on situation. It's based on when they are in the field. It's based on who they're playing against. It's based on so many different variables. So one of the biggest things with my playbook is that it's designed for the market that we're selling to. It's designed for the individuals that we're selling to. And ultimately, it's got some very simple high-level steps of how this process should go, to which we're very, very clear with our prospects as to, this is the playbook. Like, this is exactly
how it should
what's
go
going
if
to
it goes
happen.
well for you. Yeah.
That's right. So ultimately, I'm using some of the talk tracks that my sales team uses today, which is in 30 minutes, I'm going to get you all the information you need to make a decision on this. And at the end, you're going to have one of three decisions. So one is, you want to schedule another call with me. You could buy right now too.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Which
we'll
do
the
a
one
lot
call
of that.
close. We like the one call close.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's and not to gloat on that, but that I think that speaks volumes, not to us being powerful as sales people. I think that speaks volumes to how quickly we're getting people information and building confidence.
And the quality of your
with
product
them.
too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the quality of the product. Absolutely. But ultimately, we're telling them, you got three options at the end of this. You're either going to say, let's book another call, send me some information, and I want to book a call with you, to which we then tell you, well, Chris, this is a decision. Like, this next call is like, I'm here to answer questions. If you want to bring somebody else on to evaluate, we'll do that. But ultimately, this is a decision call. The second is, send me some information. We always send information. Even if they say no, I'm still going to send you a quote.
Right.
Because they'll come back. They may. But the second option that you have is, send me some information and maybe give me a call in a couple of weeks. I'm just getting started to discover. Just getting started with this, and that's fine. And the third is no. And we articulated that. And if you and I spent 30 minutes of our day and found a no, brilliant. It's good for you. It's good for me. Now I'm still going to send you pricing, so that you have that.
Because a no could change in the future, and misunderstandings.
And always feel free to come back to me, Chris, because I'm here to work for you. That's what we do here.
That's right.
We want to get you information. So if anything changes your world, come back to me. Furthermore, one of the big parts of our sales playbook is we get hyper involved with their business outside of just selling software. And I don't know a lot of software companies that are doing this, where I've got tons of different people. I got a guy who used to be in real estate. I've got a guy who used to do door-to-door advertising sales. I've got a young woman who did who sold B2B software. I've got tons of business development rock stars who have graduated into this sales role. And what we're doing is saying, if you're building a business development team, Vidyard might be able to help you. But I'm happy to jump on a call with you and even talk to your team about different strategy, how to write emails. I even help companies with hiring. So I've hired over 55 reps in my career, and I think only one of them didn't work out, which like, I'm very proud of that track record.
Poor
So
bugger.
a lot of people who sometimes it doesn't work out.
No,
but
it doesn't. Yeah.
I'll talk to individuals who are building a business development team who are, a 34-person company, and I'll then jump on calls with them to actually give them ultimately some free consulting.
Right.
The reason that that's powerful in our playbook is that they then just continue to think about us. They continue to think of us as a resource, and our product only tends to make sense in this space.
Yeah.
So they eventually have that relationship with you, and it's all relationship building. It's going back to that old idea of like, how do we help each other? And you do so much of that, Chris.
I actually like the people. I want to help them, man.
How can I help you? And not only that, a lot of times and then I'll turn it back over to you. But a lot of times in this software sales world, we talked about time. Sometimes people say, well, I don't have time for that. That person's never going to buy that sort of thing. That is totally the wrong attitude. Yeah. If that is the attitude of your company, you're in trouble. And the reason being is that if I could take 30 minutes to talk to somebody who might not even buy, but they are a potential customer, that's the best 30 minutes that I spent. Like, would I be better off just sitting at my computer reading more news, or maybe going for an extended lunch? If I can spend 30 minutes to try to help somebody under my company's brand,
learn.
What that can do for you. Now, if you can multiply that across your entire sales org,
yeah.
and you have all these different people who are not only saying, hey, I'm going to help you with the software, but if there's any other way that I can help, let me know.
Yeah.
It just makes you so much more powerful, and you see that in some of the biggest brands that are out there that aren't seen as just.
And we all make mistakes in life, but I couldn't agree with you more, because I think in the commitment to care for somebody else or serve them, if that's how you feel in your heart, when the person says no, you're able to navigate more effectively through that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great lesson out there for salespeople. I always feel. In fact, I emailed one of the larger marijuana companies, and I'd like to come and train their team. And I'm not certain my LinkedIn message
10 years ago, you couldn't say that on camera.
Of course I couldn't. Yeah.
3 years ago.
But I wanted to come train their team. And so I'm not certain my message was perfect, but it was really just an introductory message. And the gentleman sent back, I'm not interested.
Okay.
And I would say what I described would be, I'd love to talk to you at some point in time to be able to talk about your employees. I believe our company can help, and blah, blah, blah. And I was interested in a conversation. Somehow he felt I was asking for money. So I sent back a reply saying, I'm not certain what you're not interested in yet, but at this point in time, we haven't actually spoken. I said, I'm interested in speaking to you because I feel I can help in these arenas. It sounds like I might have to be patient enough to wait for you to be interested in talking to me.
Right.
And he says, I like the way you did that. You can give me a call.
There you go.
But in his mind, he didn't understand what he was told. In his mind, that no seemed easier to him. Yep. And he didn't even know why he said the no. So since my yes back to him was not to say yes, it was to respect the fact that maybe I didn't express myself correctly. But if you don't need help from me, then I would love to be able to talk and at least understand what's going on in your world. Mm-hmm. It might help me to then deal with the next customer. And I'm quite certain we're going to talk next week. I'm quite certain by the end of this communication, we will either become friends and I'll help them, or I'll know more about it. Maybe I'll help the next person.
Right.
And I think for salespeople, there are too many times that there's not that immediate return on that investment of their time. They're like, oh, I'm going to move on. This guy's not going to do it. Instead of realizing, how can I navigate through this challenging water and use this to help me next time? Great. And that's what your playbook talks to is, and there's one thing you said, it's buckets. And I love the way you said that it's meant for the specific play, not for all plays.
That's right.
Excellent. A couple more questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We talked about lessons you've learned. What's a lesson you like to give to your employees all the time in terms of their daily getting set up for their day? Like making sure their day is all set. That's a critical thing.
You got to get yourself like, there's so much conversation happening around it, but you need to be on. In sales, you have to walk into that office and you have to be on. And one of the most difficult things, or pardon me, not one of the most difficult things, but one of the really, I was talking to a good friend of mine last night. We had about a 2-hour conversation that was supposed to be half an hour about his sales team. And we were talking a lot about the ICP and what falls into the ICP. And this company might
help everybody understand what the ICP is.
Like ideal customer profile.
So what does that mean? Really, it's that this is the person who should buy our product.
So a lot of times companies will have different leads that might come inbound where it's like, well, that person isn't really like our ideal customer. Get on the phone with them. And if your salesperson gets on the phone with them, yes, they might not buy, but it just gives you another opportunity to exercise your pitch, to talk about 100%. The company.
Practice.
And then 3 calls down the road instead of sitting there. You know, when you wake up in the morning, your voice is all scratchy.
Yep.
Imagine getting on your sales call. There's a lot of salespeople that get on their most important call, and it's the first person they spoke to all day long.
Yeah.
Especially because they didn't say hi to anyone in the office in the morning. They just walked by everyone with their coffee and their headphones on.
Yeah.
And then they jump into this conversation and they're talking over themselves. They're not able to articulate the value properly.
They're not relaxed.
So one of the biggest lessons that I'm always trying to push is you got to come in, you got to have energy. Don't expect the prospect to bring energy.
No.
You've
They're
got
backing up the whole time.
You've got to jump on that call, and
Yeah.
at 9 a.m. instead of saying, "Well, I got my coffee here and it's raining out," you say, "Chris, I'm wildly excited to talk to you today." That's how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I came to the
That's what I come
office
to work
early
for.
to take a look at what you guys are doing at the factory, and I'm pumped to talk to you right now. Okay.
So just getting the right mindset and making sure that, and it goes back to what you said earlier when you talk about goal setting. Like, what do you want to accomplish personally?
Yeah.
Comes back to, we got to therefore get this sale to work out.
That's
and
right.
the next one, you got to practice. You got to get better. I'll help you, but you have to get better. Excellent.
You have to be on 100% of the time, or
Cool.
else sales isn't right for you, in my opinion.
So we've heard a lot today about accountability. Heard about your wonderful father. I'm sure mom's a fantastic
It's her
lady
birthday
as well.
today.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy
What's
birthday,
Mom's
Mom.
name?
Sheila.
Happy birthday, Sheila. Happy birthday. Hope you're having a wonderful day. What we're hearing is communication is completely changing in sales.
Mhm.
But yet it's not really. It's still back to being empathetic, being righteous, and being right.
Yeah.
And if you don't know if you're right, therefore you got to ask more questions and find out if you can help the customer. So a lot of things, even though they have seemed like they've changed, they haven't changed.
Yeah.
It's going right back to the beginning of time.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit here. Unless you have any further lessons you'd like to share about sales, like we've talked a lot about it. I like to always get to the make a difference moment when we close things out.
Sure.
Because I think what people really bring, and I think probably why you're a fantastic salesperson, a sales manager, and a good human, is that you put the other person first. So tell us, who's made a difference in your life, personally or professionally? What would you say to them?
Oh, I've got tons of people. I think that I think there's one individual that I would point out, and that's one of my father's old clients that he used to do business with. Is a gentleman named Larry Graham. And when I left Thunder Bay, Ontario, and moved to Toronto and wanted to get into software, he's a very successful businessman, and he's always bounced around the Southern Ontario area. But he came and met me in downtown Toronto. I had my little resume that had I owned a landscaping company. I spent 8 years at one company, which I thought was a bonus. But when you move to Toronto, it's like they want to see something.
It should be a bonus.
It should be for sure. But I mean, my resume looked very different than it does today. And he not only did he take the time to come and meet me, knowing that I had, and I think a lot of it goes to the relationship that him and my father had, where they were clients of one another, but then they became very good friends, and then our families became good friends. But I hadn't spoken to him in years, and I just got his email off my father, and I emailed him. I'm like, he's, might have some connections down here. And he met me in a Starbucks on King and Queen and Ossington, pardon me. I still remember. And he came and met me, and I got my sport coat on, and I hadn't seen him in years. And basically I just wanted to give him my resume, see if he knew anybody who was looking to hire somebody.
Just networking.
Networking. And he passed around my resume, got a few calls going with a few different companies that, I didn't understand their business or what they did. And I took the time to try to, but that meant a lot to me. That in his busy day with his 3 kids and his wife and his business that he's running, to come and meet me downtown Toronto and drive an hour and a half to come have coffee with me and talk to me about my resume and how I should try to kickstart my career. He was the only one that, the only resource that I had in Toronto to be able to lean on.
What was his name again?
Larry Graham.
Larry Graham, you're a good man. You're showing the way for this good man here. He's going to show the way for somebody else, I bet, right?
Absolutely. And then our relationship started to become a friendship, and he invited me and my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, to their place for Christmas, because both our families aren't in Toronto. And he was just always a good resource, good sounding board for me. And again, it's just, it speaks. Sometimes you do something small for somebody when they ask for a little bit of help, and I wasn't begging him. I just said, hey,
it's a conversation.
And
just mentorship.
And that's still stuck with me. So
That's awesome. I love them. What is something you're going to do in the next little while to make a difference for somebody? I always ask that of this show. People come to the show. I say, listen, what can you do to do something for somebody?
I actually had somebody. I love jumping on the phone and talking shop. So I was helping a friend yesterday, and I've consulted with different software companies and whatnot over the last couple of years, just on the side, after hours, getting on the calls with new managers, that sort of thing. But I love doing that, and if it's at a consultative level, great. But if it's not, it's a friend or somebody that I can help out with some.
So you
wisdom.
love doing the business help. You're like you're a business guy. Eh?
I like doing business help because I think you speak lots on this, Chris, too. Is that your business life is your personal life.
100%.
So if I can help these individuals in their business, now they can call me for anything, and I'll be there. But if these people are calling me saying, "Hey, Evan, this is I'm only my first year into management. You're 4 or 5 years into it. Like, maybe there's something I'm not seeing here." And usually I'm able to, it's a very proud moment for me to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I've been through that. This is what I did. This is how it worked." And I try to build a network of people that I'm able to help the same way that, going back to the story of Larry there helping me, I'm constantly trying to do that. I find it to be the most rewarding part of my day when I'm able to do that for anybody, I couldn't agree nothing more. Exchanged but time.
That mentorship teaches them. And I think I always ask for a lesson that we can pass on. Throughout this experience, I always look for something that we can pass on to the viewers or listeners. And I think with Real Sales Talk, I think the one thing that mentorship is really what we're talking about. It's what Larry did for you. It's what you're doing for your friends. That's something that makes a massive difference. It makes a massive difference to you because you learn and you adapt more effectively. Therefore, you can help more people. And more importantly, and I think most importantly, you help the other person. You see them accelerate.
Yeah,
it is my calling. Actually, it's what I love to do. And I from all the different things that have happened in my life, I think the most important thing that I've done is impact my employees and my children. Mm-hmm. And I hate to, they'd say, why would you put them in the same vein? I said, because I've had that same opportunity. I think as an owner of a company or as a manager of a company, you have to treat it like you have an opportunity to affect them like a parent.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to deal with the negative that has to be dealt with. And you've also got to be very positive with the positive. And I don't say you have to be overly positive. You got to be just correctly positive. But you got to give them the negative. You got to tell them the things that are going to help them to overcome and meet those objectives and then rise to that new level. Otherwise, I always worry about these people that don't like the negative and they realize when you got to get past that. So it sounds like you're doing that.
Well, Chris, that is the number one reason why new managers fail, is because they are too scared to have that conversation. As a manager, if you want to be an effective manager, you never want to do anything harmful. But you also can't be afraid that sometimes your people are going to leave the room and you're not going to be their favorite person that day. But
a bit of push.
Going all the way back to this conversation, sometimes we felt that way about the people who raised us. And, I know that it's not always the case, but a lot of times it is the case where the people who are hard on you for your betterment, you end up having a bond with them like no other.
They're the only ones that they look up for you like crazy.
Yeah, so don't look for immediate friends when you're managing. Like if there's one piece of advice I can give for any new managers or existing managers who are trying to figure out how to take their game to the next level, is don't look for that immediate connection to be friends with somebody. Drive them to be the best that they can be. Give them the hard feedback. Don't be afraid. As a manager, you have to sacrifice. Like it's hard being a manager 100%. Because I wish I could just be everyone's friend.
That'd be nice.
I wish I didn't have to challenge everyone all the time.
Yeah, but just money rolling in, everybody's happy.
Yeah, but it's really hard to sometimes have to throw, what you might want out of, relationships with your team. Your team is always going to be very tight knit. You're going to kind of be the parent figure. If you're as tight with your team as they are with each other, you've got a problem. And I think that it's important to have a really strong relationship with them, but it's also important for them for that relationship to be a little bit different, because you are the authority figure who is going to be
direction
where they're looking for direction. And sometimes they don't like what you say, but as long as it's done in good intention, your bond will be very strong, because they eventually end up saying, wow, like this made me a lot better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've come to the end of almost our full hour here. Do you have any further comments you'd like to espouse out to our group out there in sales? What would you say to them? Go after it. This is a good business. Get in sales, get after it. That's how I feel.
Just get hyper focused, learn as much as you can. I went from I went from not understanding what Salesforce was, and you say in the interview, you know what Salesforce is? Oh yeah, for sure. And when you get that job, instead of like, don't go to other people trying to understand this information. Like the computer in front of you holds all the information on
That
Earth.
black box is pretty
So
big, pretty smart.
Invest in time, go figure it out. Don't ask a stupid question. One of the biggest things that bothers me is if I ask you a question, how do you spell this? Or you know, what's you know, any question out there. Google it. Like
Check it out.
you are your own best resource.
You got to check some stuff out. Because if you force yourself to learn, you force yourself to become better.
Yeah. So just be accountable.
Be accountable. So far we've learned about accountability. We learned about the word can't. We learned a lot about Vidyard, a fantastic product out there that allows you to embed videos into emails to change the way communication's happening. It's a fantastic company. I'd like to thank Evan Santa from Vidyard for coming here, telling us a little bit about it. Do you want to do a last little pitch? Maybe tell us a little bit about the viewers out there, exactly what Vidyard does, because we haven't done that. I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, changing the way people communicate using the power of video. Yeah.
Check it out. www.vidyard.com.
There you go.
Wonderful company. I am blessed to have had Evan Santa as a friend. I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to spend the day with you here today. I think you'll find some information he talked about from communication styles and the way sales has changed the future to be helpful. We talked a lot about working together, making commitments, and meeting those commitments. I think real sales talk is exactly that. It's about being real and understand that real sales talk involves people. It involves making decisions, but most importantly, involves you putting every ounce of effort you got into it. Even if you do something wrong, you should probably figure it out. But I'll bet you with this real sales talk and every other one we do and every other one you do in your world, you can just become that much better. If you want to become a guest on our show to sit where Evan's sitting, tell us a little bit about your company, yourself, let us know. If you like these podcasts, give us some feedback. You want some more information, you want us to talk about something, put it in the comments below. We are here to serve. We're here to help. Evan Santa, thank you so much for coming here today.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure.
On behalf of Evan Santa and myself, this is Real Sales Talk. Peace. Carpe diem, my friends. Carpe diem.